In 2011, several teenagers in Syria were detained and tortured after they were caught writing revolutionary slogans on the walls of their school against current President Bashar al-Assad. Soon after, many protesters took to the streets, calling for a political revolution. In 2012, the country fell into civil war. Protesters turned into rebels as they formed fighting groups to battle the Assad regime. As of 2016, over 250,000 people have been killed.
Syrian civilians, 700,000 to be precise, still trapped in besieged locations.
However, this is more than just a war between the Syrian government and its people. Originally, the Syrian people were fighting the Assad regime for a political revolution. However, from this stemmed a religious conflict between the Sunni rebels and the Shiite regime. As the war began to gather steam, some rebel groups even became so isolated that they fought each other. The Syrian Democratic Forces entered the picture, as well as ISIS, who started fighting the Assad regime as well as the SDF. Then the SDF began fighting the Syrian people. Turkey, the US, Iran, and Hezbollah all entered the picture, as well as Russia. The Syrian rebels, as well as the SDF, are both being backed by the US, but are fighting each other. The US, Russia, and the Syrian rebels are all backing Turkey to fight ISIS. However, Russia has a complicated relationship with Turkey regarding the US, which we will get to in a minute. The thing is, Turkey is fighting the Kurds instead of ISIS. This is complicated because the Kurds are allied with the US, but we are basically funding their enemy. Iran is funding Russia, Hezbollah, and the Syrian government, as well as fighting ISIS. Russia is backing the Assad regime, as well as fighting ISIS and the Syrian rebels. To say the least, the situation is very complicated. US relations with Russia have been tense ever since the fall of the Nazi Party. During the Cold War, the US and, at the time, the USSR liked to push each other around and threaten one another with nukes. Now, the two superpowers are still locked in a battle of grudges, only not on the scale of the Cold War. The conflict that the two countries are now engaged in is referred to as a proxy war. This means that both countries are basically funding smaller countries to fight each other in their place. This way, the two powerful countries don't get their hands dirty, and the smaller countries suffer. This is a very dangerous situation to be in. So, with the US funding the Syrian rebels, and Russia funding the Assad regime, as well as both countries funding Turkey, who is fighting an ally of the US, the superpowers are locked in a proxy war. Move by move, the ice is getting thinner and thinner between Russia and the United States. Russia stated in late 2016 that it would not hesitate to shoot down American planes conducting airstrikes over Syria. They also claim that NATO has been knowingly mobilizing its forces closer to Russia's borders, and that US airstrikes on the Syrian army would lead to a war. The reason that US and Russian relations in and after the Syrian war is the most important problem facing our next president is that a war between the two superpowers would be catastrophic. Even if a hypothetical war didn't go nuclear, many countries that are allied with the US sit in Russia's backyard. If Russia were to harm these countries, it would draw the US and other NATO/UN powers even deeper into the fray.
Something for the vagabond man over my dead body.
This relationship with Russia is the biggest problem facing our next president. The US and Russia have been pushing each other back and forth throughout this war and getting others to do their fighting for them, as well as antagonizing each other with political and military threats. I think I share the same view as the rest of my generation when I say that I don't want to see a war between these two superpowers that not only has the potential to draft me, not only has the potential to destroy both nations, but has the potential to destroy life on Earth entirely. Nothing is worth the risk of a war with Russia.
So